Alright, let's start this thing off with some beautiful drone footage here. Thanks to my friend Willie for taking over as pilot in command while I do the chase with the Phantom 3 Pro. So you might be wondering how I got such a large increase in efficiency, and I should explain that in Arduplane there's a feature called servo auto trim, and what it does if it's enabled is every 10 seconds under stable conditions it sets the current servo positions to be the trim positions. So it kind of updates what neutral is, and that's kind of what a human pilot would do in manual. And it turns out that the rudder had some alignment issues, and so in the takeoff footage you'll see that one of the ailerons, well, the left one, you can see it pretty clearly, is at its neutral position, but the neutral position is way off. So I adjusted the rudder linkage to give it some left rudder so that the ailerons could relax and fly in a more neutral position. Here's some awesome chase footage by Greg. Super cool. Oh, there you go. So watch the left aileron. You see that it's high, and then as soon as I launch it, the flight controller feels that I've messed with the rudder, and that now means that aileron, well, I guess both ailerons, can fly in a more neutral position, which is really cool. And it was a real issue because the plane was making a large right-hand circle, yet there was a ton of left aileron trim in there. So fixing that issue allowed the airplane to be a lot more efficient. Same OSD as last time, but I'll go over it. Top left, number of GPS satellites, wind speed, airspeed, ground speed, distance and direction to home, flight mode. Most of it was done in return to launch mode, which means it was circling around the home position. About 350 feet altitude is what I had it set to, with a 256 meter radius holding pattern, which works out to be a mile in circumference, which is kind of cool. Top middle, we have number of flying minutes. Top right, we have milliamp hours consumed. Then we have current being pulled from the battery voltage, flight altitude, number of miles across the ground, and throttle percentage, which in this flight mode is controlled by the flight controller. So in the previous flight, I launched really early in the morning, and I got the benefit of that super calm air. This time I launched a little before 2 o'clock, and I had the benefit of the calm air at the end of the flight, which turned out to be really useful. So once you've gotten, 7 hours, 420 minutes into the flight, your battery gets weak. I'm at 10.2 volts, and of all the times to have really nice calm air, it's when your whole airplane is weaker than usual. Beautiful sunset there. Unfortunately, the park closes at sunset, so I still have a little bit of time left, but yeah, I had to cut this flight a little bit shorter than it could have been. I got about 440 minutes, and then the FPV camera is doing pretty well, but it was starting to get dark, and I figured it was time to come down. So I flipped over into fly-by-wire A mode, which is kind of like angle mode, and dropped the flaps just for their extra drag to help get the plane down a little quicker. Yeah, right as I touched down, I think we hit 223 miles across the ground, which is a long ways. Luckily I get the airplane down just before the concrete, so that's a big positive there. Here's some more detailed shots of the airplane. Somebody asked how I managed to fit all the electronics in there. I made a little board for the flight controller to mount to. I'll show you what it looks like in Google SketchUp here in a second. But double-sided foam tape does not like to stick to 3D prints very well, so before applying the double-sided tape, I put down a layer of epoxy on the 3D printed part, and that helps the tape stick a lot better. So there's not a whole lot to it really. The power runs under that blue Velcro right there, and that goes forward to a little 30 amp BLheli ESC made by DYS, I think. There in the top middle, you can see the GPS mount and a place for me to mount that Velcro to keep the battery from shifting. Here's what that part looks like. The two small through holes are for the spars. The large hole is just to get rid of material, and you can see a small little cutout in the top where the GPS fits. This was the motor mount adapter. Yep, it basically does what it says. It helps you mount the motor to the front of the airplane. And then the other part is the little ramp, I call it, that the flight controller rests on. And you can see that there's no holes in the bottom. I held it where I wanted it and then drilled the holes one at a time to make it stay in place. Alright, here's the awesome data. I love studying this. So I had better wind conditions. It started out about 5 miles an hour and it went down to about 1. Got 7.4 hours of flight, 223 miles across the ground, averaging a little faster speed. I did bring up the minimum airspeed so it didn't get into that crazy high alpha mode where it was on the back side of the LD, lift to drag ratio curve. What else? I used just a little bit more battery and it was about 10% more efficient. 5.7 miles per amp hour and averaging a mere 5.3 amps during the nearly 7.5 hour flight. I said this last time, but I think the next step is to put some solar cells on there to try to partially resupply energy to the battery during flight. But yeah, thanks for watching.